okay, speaking of books, welcome to the show, folks.
Oh yeah, sorry. I don't
Welcome to
even
the
know.
show.
Like
We're
I'm
talking
cleaning
books.
out my email, and I don't even know that you've started recording because I'm not looking at you.
The recall paradox. Does anyone listen to Libro? Alyssa and I are a part of their influencer ALC program.
Yeah, they seem
Where
to like.
they
I was a little bit floored. The like at 12 p.m. on the first day of every month, I get really excited to see what ALCs we have, and
yeah.
I was shook to see how many we had.
This is quite a bit. I've never seen so many, and I'm like, there's some sci-fi ones I'm getting excited about. Okay, so yeah, we'll check that out. All right, so speaking of books, book of the month. Last month was the first month in a while that I actually got some books, right? Because
Mhm.
I've had a very I don't know what y'all are doing over there with selecting books, but I'm not happy with it,
Mhm.
and so I had paused my membership. But then last month they had two books that I really wanted, which was really good actually. That's the name of the book, and Lone Women. So I got those, and I also got the London Seance Society. So this month I looked, and we're back to the same thing. There's nothing I want.
I almost
Okay.
got that
But
Adeline book or Adelaide book, but then I was like, I don't really know if I care about this. Then I I put it in, and then I was like,
you know what it is for me, and like we all utilize Book of the Month differently, but for me, when I look at Book of the Month, if it's something where it's like that, I can get that from the library because I don't feel like I need to like own it,
mhm,
then I won't get it from Book of the Month, right?
mhm,
So like one of their features has to be a book that I really wanted to get, that I was anticipating buying regardless.
mhm.
Those are the ones I tend to get. And I often don't get any older books because I find those all day at McKay for like 49 cents. So while it's cheaper, yes, than retail, I still get them cheaper at McKay. That brings you to my next point. Correct me if I'm wrong or if you even know this. I feel like in the past, when you got a main pick from Book of the Month and then you added an add-on, the add-on was $9.99. That's right, right?
Yeah, or free
Now
if
it's
you use.
$15.99.
What?
Yeah, I was like, hang on a minute. I was like, hang on. And I had to go back
I always
to some
used a
past
credit.
invoices.
I always use a credit, but what?
Yeah, you use your credit for your main
And
pick.
you can use a credit for your other one too if you have another one.
If you have them.
Yeah,
But if you have your one credit and you pick your main book that uses your one credit and then you want to add on books, it used to be that
$9.99.
add-ons were $9.99. It said $15.99. I screenshotted it because I was like, am I tripping out right now? So they've upped it. And I was trying to remember, did they announce
Probably
this
not.
price change?
And if they did, they probably
You know?
buried it somewhere so we all didn't see it.
Right, but I was like, hang on a minute, you just like doubled that. What is going on? So that is not a steal for me. That's not a steal. Now, me using one credit to get a book and then being able to get one or two additional brand new releases at the cost of $9.99 is great.
Mhm.
You start talking $15.99, I'm gonna pass. So I don't know how long it's been in effect because my account has been paused for so many months. But I just want to make sure that you are aware of that change. And I wanted to know if
I
you
am not aware
heard
of that
about them
change.
announcing this change.
And since my phone is currently being occupied, um,
Yeah.
I can't check
Yeah.
for y'all.
So yeah, if there are any Book of the Month users out there, let me know if you heard them talk about an increase for adding on books.
I also just want
Just
to know what
curious.
people think about Book of the Month now because I feel like I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm too far into this space in books, and my taste has moved so far from like
General,
commercial,
popular.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that I am now not in sync with Book of the Month. But I felt like this before. There were times where I felt like this before. I've said to you a lot of times, like just write it out. They'll have a wave again where they're good. and then
Yeah,
they'll be
you have said that a
stinky
few
again.
times,
They do seem to go in waves, but also like I like when they match up to my Libro FM picks.
which is so rare.
Yeah, I like when there's because
Ugh,
when there's something I really liked in my Libro ALCs, and then it's on a book of the month, I usually get that because I'm really
mm-hmm.
excited to own both of them together.
Right,
And
right.
then I I do there are like sometimes they'll put out like a fantasy, like a more popular fantasy, or they'll put out a more popular like lit fic. But for the
Yeah,
most part, like I don't know what I like them for anymore.
yeah,
Other than the
because
ease of
again,
using like a credit and feeling like I'm not spending money even though I've already spent the money.
right, right. Yeah, again, I just put my membership back on pause again for 3 months. So I don't know. And even the book that I got last month, the London Seance Society, it was a fun read, but it's going in the McKay Unhaul bag.
Yeah, a lot of the thrillery books,
You know what I
especially
mean?
for me,
Yeah,
are not books that I need to keep. We've had this conversation before
yeah,
where I don't feel like I need to keep a lot of thriller books.
yeah,
There's very few that I hold on to.
yeah. And I'm also wondering because every time I go to McKay, there are so many book of the month books there,
Oh yeah.
so many. And it's like, I wonder, like, what is the ratio of people that are Book of the Month members that get the books on a monthly basis, read them and actually keep them versus reading them and then immediately unhauling them? Like, I wonder what those numbers look
I
like.
mean, we were in Savers yesterday and there were tons of Book of the Month books. I
Yeah,
almost got one, but I was like, I think I have this. I have to
yeah,
start carrying around my database of books because I can't. I can't
I know.
anymore. I gotta put it in
Same.
my Google Docs because I can't. There's too many. But yeah, no, I don't. Book of the month.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep it. I might.
Because again, just like last month, every now and then,
Yeah,
it's something that you were looking forward to. Of course, I'm going to get whatever Victor
Lavelle.
Laval puts out. And when Eric Carl Anderson was talking about really good. Actually, I was like, oh, that sounds like a good read. And then they had it.
Have you read that one yet?
So
Because I'm not
again,
sure about that one.
I'm going to start it this week.
Okay, you let me know. I
Yeah.
feel like I've heard mixed
Yeah.
things. Anyway, speaking of that, what are you reading? What's going on?
I'm struggling. Again, still reading a lot of things, but there are two books. I'm only going to talk about this one that I'm struggling with. And it is Cursed Bread
Well, why are you struggling
by
with cursed
Sophie
bread?
McIntosh. I'm going to get into it. I'm going to get into it. And I can't wait for you to start because I need to see what you think.
Because you know I did like her
So,
other book, right?
exactly.
But that
And it's not that I don't like this. I'm having a very weird experience. I almost don't even know how to explain this. Mm, I don't dislike this book.
mm-hmm.
I'm not even. I don't know what's happening. It's just. I don't know if it's because like nothing's going on, and I do have things marked because I'm trying to like figure things out. Like where are we going with? Like where are we going with this? A lot of things that have been hinted at, but I just don't understand what we're doing right now.
It sounds like me reading
And
The Water Cure. They
yeah, and some things are very interesting, especially this relationship between this I don't know how to say her name, the baker's wife and this other very fancy lady. Their relationship is interesting. They're both married, and their marriages are very interesting because there's some weird stuff going on. And then these two ladies together as friends is extremely interesting. But in terms of like the cursed bread part or whatever we're getting to, um I'm trying to figure out how we're getting there with this unsolved mystery. But right now I have an interest in these people, but at the same time, when I'm not reading this book, I absolutely do not think about it, and then I forget about it. And I don't have a strong desire to like, oh, like, when I was reading Rabbit Hutch, and like every minute I was away from it, I was like, what is going on in that story? Do you think this was going on? I mean, I was always thinking about it. I couldn't wait to get back to it. Once I put this down for the day, it just like poof, just leaves my realm of thought. So it's a very strange experience because, like, again, I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. I don't know what I feel about it. Maybe I'm not feeling enough. Do I sound confused?
yes.
Because I feel confused.
All right. Well, it sounds like I have to start it sooner rather than
Yeah.
later,
And
so that we can
again,
talk about it.
folks, this is a very short book. It is only 179 pages. I'm at page 100, but this is like a one-day read. I have been reading this for a week. Okay?
I will say
So anyway, this is Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh, and thank you very much, Doubleday, for
for
this gifted
sending me this
copy.
confusing book. I definitely felt that way reading The Water Cure, and when I got to start the part where you start getting answers to a lot of the questions you had, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is not fulfilling me in any way, shape, or form. Like,
Ooh,
um, but
interesting.
the
Yeah,
premise of Cursed Bread sounds really good, and just
it
like the premise
does.
of The Water Cure. And I don't know, I'm nervous to read it,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I'm hopeful. But now that you're talking, I'm less so.
I mean, again, you could have a totally different experience, and that's why I'm so curious to see where you land with it. But it's weird when you're reading a book that you actually don't dislike, but like you really can't articulate what you feel about it.
Sometimes it just there's just like a disconnect, like, and I don't
Yeah,
there you don't almost don't need any more to say. It's just kind of
I
like there's just a
like.
disconnect. It's not going to work.
I'm gonna be honest. Like at this point, I kind of want like separate books about these women and their marriages because I'm trying to figure out why are y'all doing that over there, and why does your husband act like this, and then you want to give me vibe, like you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't mind like two novellas that go together about their marriages and then their relationship with each other. That would be interesting to me.
Interesting.
But that's not what that book's about. These are just the elements in the book as we go along to get to whatever this mystery is.
I think, yeah, I'll have to read it and give you my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if you're going to talk about an early arc, I'll talk about an early arc. So coming out in June, June 20th, apparently.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say when that book comes? Oh, you know what? Sorry, it doesn't matter. We're already in April. Go ahead. I thought I had time. It's going to be out by the time this podcast comes out.
19 Claws and a Blackbird by Augustina Bazterrica. I finally
Okay.
read the short story collection. Finally, I got this like 2 weeks ago. I read this.
Right.
Um, so this is the author of Tender as a Flesh. Thank you to Scribd for sending me these stories. I really loved these. I know that not everybody likes short stories or short story collections. I know that they can
Right.
be a bit of a hit or miss for people because I guess like sometimes you like one or two and then the rest of them are kind of meh. But I really
Mm-hmm.
liked getting more insight into or get more in of her work as it's being translated because there is still this theme of darkness, which I really just like. There's this like goth vibe of everything kind of. There's this feminine rage that kind of just
Ooh,
is throughout. It opens
love
with a
me some feminine
story
rage.
with it opens with a story about this dentist and she's standing on her balcony and like first a pair of dentures falls and then like a body falls from an upper building and it's a neighbor she really didn't
Mm,
like. um so there's like the premise of that opener, and then there's another story in here that really continues to stand out to me, and it's basically about um women getting turning the tables on like date rapists, and it's really kind of
mm.
dark and well done, and I really loved it. um so like those are kinds of the vibes that you're getting. There's a lot of feminine rage, and
Wow.
it says that this collection of 20 brutal, darkly funny short stories takes into our deepest fears and through our most disturbing fantasies. Through stories about violence, alienation, and dystopia, Basterica's vision of the human experience emerges in complex and unexpected ways, often unsettling and sometimes thrilling and always profound.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's good too. In Roberto, a girl claims to have a rabbit between her legs. A woman's neighbor jumps to his death in a light, swift, and monstrous sound. And in Candy Pink, a woman fails to contend with a difficult breakup in five easy steps. That one's also really good. There's a few
Wow.
that really stand out. The rabbit between her legs one is kind of great, and then Like you think you know where it's going, and then it kind of like does a nice little
Yeah.
twist. And then the breakup one is really good. There's another one about like body image. There's a lot of really good. I thought they were really good. I think you would really like it.
This
If you
sounds
like short
fantastic.
stories, if you like things just a little bit dark and ragey, it's
Yeah.
good. Really liked it.
That
So
sounds
that's
so
out from
good.
Scribner on June 20th. So you'd
Very
see me
nice.
reading an arc well before the
She did it.
date.
She did it, folks.
I
She
would
did
like
it.
my cupcake.
With the candle on top. Wow, that's I'm so interested in her as an author. How do you know off the top of your head how many books
She's written
she
like
has
in
that has not
Argentina. I have no idea.
been so many? I'm so glad that more authors are being translated into English.
Well, Jesus and I were talking about Spanish language books recently, and recently being yesterday, and we were talking about how a lot of the really well-known sort of modern classics end up being out of
Mhm.
South America, and how like Argentina in particular has a really fantastic literary scene. And they have a lot
Yeah.
of really good books coming out of it, out of Argentina, but and other places too. Like and
Right.
Isabella Allende is Chilean and all this other stuff. So,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of really wonderful books coming out of at least South America,
Yeah.
and other places too, which is why you need to read translated lit. But I really have been
Yeah.
absolutely floored by the women writers coming out of Argentina that we've been getting translations from like in the
Mhm.
last year or so. So
Mhm.
I want more. So if
Yeah.
anybody wants to make more, show up. Please do.
Show up. Are you a
Are
translator?
you
Do you
a
want to become a
publisher?
translator?
Are you a publisher? Please.
And look at the other countries that don't have many translated works. Maybe you can do that.
Yeah,
That's going to be a different podcast about
yeah.
translation.
But no,
Probably a couple of them because it's so
it
interesting.
is really interesting. But yeah, no, Argentina in particular, and is just the women just seem to have this rage
Mhm.
that I
Yeah.
I don't know, I connect to. But it's
And
really good.
they are getting it out and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are here for talk about something that isn't related to translation, but I guess is kind of somewhat uh,
Yeah.
similar
It
in
could
the
be.
idea
It is.
that so there's been a lot of talk recently. We touched a little bit on AI and like art in our interview with Emily. So if you
Mhm.
haven't seen that or listened to that podcast, please go check that one out. We did talk a brief bit about like using AI to write things, using AI to make art, how that
Yeah.
what that's like. Is it something, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, is it acceptable to use it to
Mhm.
generate art for your books, or
Ethical. Is it ethical?
ethical, like the ethical dilemma of AI and art? Um,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we really wanted to talk about specifically was the narration aspect of it, because there's a lot of, especially Apple books, like really doubling down on AI narration and how is that going to be received? How does that work? What does that do for um to the whole like audiobook industry? There was a Book Riot article, which I don't know if we still have flagged anywhere, that was really interesting, that was written by I don't know if she's deaf or hearing impaired, but somebody, no, that's not right. Well, no, she's visually impaired um person, and how she uses audiobooks to,
Mhm.
tremendously to consume almost anything, or just even text to speech. So it was a really interesting sort of opinion piece on the future of AI and narration. Which, do you still have that
Yeah.
somewhere?
You put it in our chat. But so before you sent me this article, I didn't even know that Apple launched the AI narrator program. I didn't even know that was a thing they were doing. So that was news to me. And it doesn't make you wonder who is going to begin to follow suit in that action.
Yeah. um I found the article. I also have Travis Baldree, who wrote Legends and Lattes, also put out a little video, which let me just, I guess we'll start with the article.
Oh, about this?
Yeah, let me start with the
Okay.
article and then we can listen to his little 6-minute thing where he shows the difference
Yeah, for
between
sure.
AI and AI and actual human voices and stuff. So this was written
Mhm.
by Kendra Winchester and it's from March, and the headline is Better Than Nothing: Exploring the Limitations of AI Narrated Audiobooks from a Disabled Person's Perspective. Um, I hate. I get that like people have to get their bag with like ads and stuff. It's really irritating navigating sites.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
Since Apple launched its AI narrator program, the internet has been abuzz debating what is in store for the future of audiobooks. Is this the end of audiobook narrators? Is this a breakthrough in accessibility for disabled people? How do we balance the two? Even though I've read more articles about AI audiobook narration than I could count, I haven't seen many, if any, outlets asking disabled people who actually use assistive technology to read what we think of this development. As someone who uses audiobooks and screen readers to read text, I quickly grew frustrated by Apple's insistence that AI narration was 100% a great thing. While some commenters hedge their bets, the prevailing point of view seems to be that for disabled people, AI narration is better than nothing. And that line really kind of bugged me a little bit. This idea that, like, you should just be happy with what you've got.
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
I know that you don't read a lot of things via audiobook anymore, but I
But I have and I still do occasionally, so, you
and
know.
I find it hard to sit down and read. I get very distracted, but finding audiobooks has been a tremendously helpful thing for me and like how my brain works and stuff. Um,
Mhm.
I don't have a visual impairment, but I do have like an attention impairment, and um,
Yeah.
and so like I'll even use the uh text to speech function to, because
Mhm.
it doesn't bother me to have like when I just get too distracted and too tired to make like my Kindle read to me, because
Mm.
I find it easier to focus when I'm reading and listening, um
Mhm.
just like subtitles on TV. But
Yeah.
there's so many limitations to AI narration, and they, because of the subtleties of language, um it doesn't always understand the way you're supposed to read a word, or where to put any inflection, or
Yeah.
how to pronounce certain things sometimes. So it really does change the experience of reading when you remove the human element of it, the element.
Yeah, because so we're talking about, you know, computer generated voice.
Hmm.
And the way I look at audiobooks, audiobook narration is it is actually an acting job.
Hmm.
It is an acting job. And so just like an actor who reads a script to play a role on a show or a movie, they're not just going to stand there and just read the script. They're going to have emotional moments and all kinds of feelings that another human being can resonate with. And I am not convinced you're going to get that with AI narration.
I don't, I mean, it's the kind of thing we were talking about with Emily. Like, in the future, is there a chance that you could get AI to be nuanced enough to generate good art that's their own and unique,
Hmm.
to write you an actually well written story, maybe to narrate with any with like the same level of nuance and tone and inflection and
Hmm.
emphasis and emotion as a, a human narrator, maybe, but there's always going to be an element of like uncanny valleyness about it. There's always going to be
Hmm.
an element of like, this isn't quite right,
Yeah.
in my humble opinion.
Something's a bit off.
Yeah.
That's, Yeah.
And I do think that, saying or implying that it's better than nothing to people who really do need to rely on audio for their ability to read is it's shitty. Like, I don't know a nicer way to put that, but it's shitty. Like, it's really shitty. It's just kind of like you're throwing a bone and being like, it's just cheaper for me to do it this way. So this is what you get.
Yeah, that was going to be my next statement is about, everything can't be you do it because it's cheaper. And also, I'm wondering when an author publishes a book with a publisher, are they going and if a particular publisher is like hell bent on, yeah, we're doing the AI narration thing or whatever, but that author is just like completely against it, will they be forced to have their audiobook produced by AI narration? Or is it going to come down to a thing where this is going to be like a part of the conversation with authors when they're like reviewing contracts with publishers? Like, I do not want my audiobook to be narrated by AI. I want humans
Well,
to.
so that's interesting because I think I talked about this in a video about some things that were going on with Amazon and Audible and like I can't remember the name of it, but the company that does a lot of the like ACX maybe it is. I can't remember,
Oh
so forgive
yes,
me.
ACX.
And I'm fairly certain that the contracts for well, the contracts that the voice actors have to sign, basically for the most part, they sign over the rights to their own voice. So
Oh, so they can do
so they
whatever
can
with their
take their
voice.
voices, use their voices, and make them into AI, which I think is what some of this is
Oh.
some of the backlash I believe is because and someone if I'm wrong on any of this, correct us. This is all new and forever evolving as technology grows. But I think that they're sort
Yeah.
of using existing voices to create these AI voices, and you don't
Now
have
see,
the right
that's
to your
interesting.
own voice, which is crazy to me.
That makes me super uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then w- how much control the author has, I think that's going to go come down to like anything. It's going to come down to how much influence you have as an author, period. Like are you Brandon Sanderson or are you like Jane Smith, new debut novelist? Because Brandon
Wow.
Sanderson might have more say in it, or someone of that, caliber may have more say in what goes on with their audiobooks. But, debut author, do you? Probably not.
Oh boy, I feel like
It's going to be a really
this is
complex.
gonna this is gonna get nasty.
I think this is going to be a really interesting thing to watch going forward. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, so back to this article, she says, honestly, I'm tired of being told that I should be grateful for better than nothing. I'm exhausted by non-disabled people shrugging off the voices of disabled people, pointing out the issues with AI narration for books. I am eternally frustrated at seeing articles discussing AI narrators without a single disabled person quoted or even mentioned. And I think that that's a really valid and important thing to highlight is that I am not I may have an opinion, but I am not the
Mhm.
person that benefits the most from having an audiobook or having any sort of narration available to me. So, my
Right.
opinion, when people like me, should not hold as much weight as the people that need it.
Exactly.
So,
I want to go back to the very first sentence of the second paragraph, which is, and this is really the key. Audiobooks are and will always be first and foremost an accessibility tool, which has now turned into an incredible
mhm.
art form. And so I think that, and I'm definitely guilty of this. I think that we forget what it was meant to do
uh,
because we just look at it as another form of entertainment to consume a story.
I agree. I think that we have forgotten that there is an original purpose for a lot of this. And
Yeah.
I so I went through this because I want Litbro to do I want Litbro to do an episode on Catcher in the Rye. And
Mhm.
I don't feel like reading it with my eyeballs. So I was like,
Right.
it's a classic. There has to be. an audiobook. There
Yeah.
isn't. Um, there's
Really?
a pirated one on YouTube. I guess Salinger's estate never wanted it. He was very like he was very fastidious about his books. He really only wanted like one cover for his book. He was he's an interesting character. Not the point of this episode.
Mm.
But apparently in there are like there's like a national association for the blind or something like that that has
Mhm.
a whole audiobook thing where you can go and you can by the mail get these like tapes. It's literally like on a tape recorder, at least what I've seen with patients that have them. It's literally like a tape recorder. Remember like the long flat ones that you plug
Yeah.
headphones into? And you could that's how you're getting, audiobooks, and like you'll get them for free, I believe. And I believe that things like Catcher in the Rye are available there, but they're not available to the general public. So there is like a whole world of tools for disabled persons. Specifically, we're talking about AI, audiobooks. They aren't accessible to the general public, but they're also not accessible to like a lot of people. Like most of us are not living in a world where we're going to walk around with our Casio Walkman and like
Oh,
listen, you know what I mean? So
exactly.
like yes, there are options, but we have better options, and we shouldn't be just throwing disabled people you should just be happy with this.
Right.
Like it's more accessible to
Wow.
have like an Audible or something on your phone and all these other things. um
Absolutely.
so why are we not making that good? Why does that have to be so bare bones? Why I get why it's money, pennies, dollars and cents and all that. But I don't know, am I making any sense anymore? I don't know anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just there's a lot I think that goes into this that isn't being thought of because it's only being thought of in that dollars and cents lens.
Mhm. It's that, and like, you want to be the company that's on the cutting edge of doing things, right? You don't want to be the last to get on the boat, so you want to steer, the ship first or whatever, and there's a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Trying to beat everyone else in doing it. You want to be the one that we were the first to create this. We were the first to launch that.
Technology.
I know. I
I
know.
think that I do like this part of the author's article. AI narration could prove useful in other ways. From my perspective, as someone who already uses Apple's screen reader app on iPhone, I think that using AI narration technology to create a better screen reader could benefit disabled people. So, like, there is a space for this, I guess is my point. But
Mhm.
maybe the space is not to take over like audiobooks as an art form. So it's because
Right.
the one currently available often glitches and stumbles its way across social media and personal emails, often making it easier for me to just hand my phone to someone nearby and ask, "Can you just read this for me?" But let's not pretend that AI reading text as a screen reader is the same thing as an audiobook.
Exactly.
Because I have that screen reader read books to me, and let me tell you, it's funny
Wow.
how bad it is sometimes. And it puts, like, emphasis in weird places, like, instead of saying grimace, it's grimace, and
Oh.
you're like and
Oh.
I do think it's an incredibly useful tool, like, if anybody's a writer, have AI or whatever your screen reader is,
Yeah.
Word does it, like, have it read your work to you because 'cause you're gonna hear, like, things that you can't pick up reading. Like, if you use like, I'm just gonna keep using grimace as a word as an example, but like if you use the word grimace too many times in your book, you're gonna notice it because it's gonna be going grimace, grimace, and it's
Wow.
gonna irritate you. But yeah, I mean,
Oh, that is really
I
interesting.
think that there's a lot of e- applications for improving different technologies with AI,
Yeah.
but I just replacing art forms with it is just it seems wrong in on so many levels.
Oh boy, this is gonna get really interesting.
Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about, because now, like at the end of the article, she goes into the thing with Travis Baldree.
Mhm.
and their example of a difference, because Travis Baldree narrated uh, Legends and Lattes. So I
Oh,
think he
okay.
is like a narrator. Like he does that in general.
Oh,
Um,
I did not know.
so he created this little video here to show the difference between, and this is his book, AI narration and human narration. So like I think that this is interesting to take a little listen to, just to get an idea of how they, though they are similar, there are subtle nuances that are different.
All right,
Okay.
just for comparison's sake, so we can talk about the difference between an AI, even a very natural sounding one, reading an audiobook versus an actual human narrator, and what kind of differences we're really talking about here, because they're extreme for a variety of reasons, and they always will be, because naturalism is only a part of the equation. Anyway, this is a chunk of the prologue of my next book, and I'm going to show you how a honestly really good natural language AI reads it, and then I'm going to read it, and you're going to see what the difference is.
Still with us, hey? Viv groggily regained consciousness. She felt like she was going to be sick. Maybe she already had been. The first things she saw were Rackham's flinty eyes, glittering above the braids of his muddy salt and pepper beard. Viv shook her head and looked around. The edges of her vision seemed smeared with grease. Somehow she'd braced her back against one of the oaks. She'd apparently also had the presence of mind to tear off the bottom of her shirt and bind her wound around a handful of moss. The cloth was soaked through, and the earth underneath was a churn of mud and blood. At the sight of it, she began to drift, and Rackham brought her back with a surprisingly gentle slap to the cheek. He sighed and shook his head. The battle was done. If his presence hadn't been enough to tell her, then the unhurried movement of the warriors behind him would have. I figured it when you signed on. Hoped I'd be wrong, but nah. I knew this was the way it would go. Younger is always dumber, and wising up takes blood and time. He looked away, as though into some other possible future, then back at her.
I'm gonna skip to the next one just so we don't like get in
Okay.
trouble.
Yep.
Um, and here's the
All right, now here's me reading it. Still with us, eh? Viv groggily regained consciousness. She felt like she was going to be sick. Maybe she already had been. The first things she saw were Rackham's flinty eyes, glittering above the braids of his muddy salt and pepper beard. Viv shook her head and looked around. The edges of her vision seemed smeared with grease. Somehow she'd braced her back against one of the oaks. She'd apparently also had the presence of mind to tear off the bottom of her shirt and bind her wound around a handful of moss. The cloth was soaked through, and the earth underneath was a churn of mud and blood. At the sight of it, she began to drift, and Rackham brought her back with a surprisingly gentle slap to the cheek. He sighed and shook his head. The battle was done. If his presence hadn't been enough to tell her, then the unhurried movement of the warriors behind him would have. I figured it when you signed on. Hoped I'd be wrong, but I knew this was the way it would go. Younger is always dumber, and wising up takes blood and time. He looked away as though into some other possible future, then back at her. Every new prospect, I give them even odds. I look at the hands, the arms. No scars? Then it's even odds that the first one they get kills them.
so like you can't even do the voices, right? Like
Mm.
the AI is not
Yeah.
bad.
It's not bad, but like we said, like something is off.
Missing.
Yeah.
And I think for me, so stories we've been telling stories as humans for
Yes.
eons, and
Ever. Mm-hmm.
they have been told orally before they were ever told on paper. And so there is
Mm-hmm.
like a great tradition of telling stories, of oral narration, of bringing life to the words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that gets lost in AI. So even though that voice doesn't feel like a computer generated voice, um,
Mm-hmm.
and it says the words relatively correctly, there's
Yeah.
there's a there's a humanity, I guess, that's missing from it all. There's no fun voices for your characters. There's no interesting pacing and pauses and elongations of words and any of that stuff that brings like drama and intrigue and fun to
Yeah.
a story. It's just a pretty
It's just
decent,
straight through. It's just
yeah,
read straight through.
it's a pretty decent computer voice. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
good voice. It's better than the
Yeah.
AI narrator on your screen reader. But
Yeah.
and if that's what the screen reader was like, that would be great. I'm here for that. If you get the
Right.
screen reader to like that almost level of reading where it doesn't sound like a total bot is reading to you,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really interesting use of that technology, I think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But don't take away the art piece of the art form that is, voice narration.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's my soapbox.
I don't know where we're yeah, I don't know where we're going with this. I'm slightly concerned because it just seeps into other things as well, like this won't be the last thing.
Oh no.
So it's like I don't know if we really need to be alarmed like right now, but like I'm concerned with the
Where
ways
it's
in which
going.
this could go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's always kind of been a part of technology, right? There's this fear of it taking away things that we're used to, that we like, that like think about all the jobs that have been lost through automation and
Mm-hmm.
all of this. So it is hard to change it, but there's also benefits of all of that automation and everything, but I do feel like
Yeah.
removing I feel like messing with art is really weird. It's such a like specifically human individual act that to
Mm-hmm.
try to make an AI do it is strange to me.
Right. And also just not considering the people who need it as an accessibility tool. That's really the problem.
And
It's like you've taken a whole group of people and just like put them to the side. Like they're not even part of your thinking and trying to figure this thing out. They've been completely excluded.
like I don't know if it's really going to save the consumer any money, or is it just going to save the
It's not
producer
going to save us
money.
a dime. It's going to save them money.
So it's not
It's going to
even.
be less people they have to pay, but it's still going to be the same cost.
Mhm. I don't think that if it was somehow going to make audiobooks more accessible to the point where like they were easier to get a hold of and they weren't like $40 if you didn't have credits on Audible.
Yeah. It
I
still blows my mind how expensive audiobooks actually are.
and like it's makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I understand driving the
Mhm.
cost down, but driving the cost down for art seems to be antithesis to what art is.
Mhm. I would agree.
So I don't know.
I
I'd
would
love to know
agree.
everybody's thoughts on how things are going with AI, whether it's the narration stuff that's happening, the art
Mhm.
things. There was a lot of discussion several months ago about AI and art and cover designs and all of this. And I get why if you're an indie self-pub author and you only have so much money to spend on stuff, you might try to AI generate a cover design
Yeah.
for your book because
Yeah.
it's a tool that's available to you. But the fact that AI is pulling from existing artwork and art styles,
Exactly.
that's a problem. That is a problem. And you're not giving original creators credit. And throughout all of this, I think about what will be the backlash of all of this. Because remember when, I don't remember exactly when it happened, maybe like the late 70s or 80s, the music industry, a lawyer stepped in and started getting the artists back the rights to their own work.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like that was a whole big thing is taking the rights back to these artists and like
Mhm.
clawing back and giving them like like what Michael Jackson owned the Beatles catalog and stuff like that, and you're like they didn't
Right.
even own their own work. and how shocking that
Exactly.
was to kind of find out that other people
Mhm.
owned all these things.
Yeah.
And like, I wonder if there will be sort of something similar that occurs maybe 15, 20 years down the line, where once AI kind of comes in and kind of co-ops a bunch of stuff, is there a backlash where the people who, because AI doesn't create anything really new from scratch, it's all based on input. So
Right.
if I wonder if there's going to be a time where people are going to be like, no, that input was mine and you haven't credited me for it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because even now there are so many I'll just talk about Facebook in particular. There are a ton of um like AI art groups. Like I know Mid Journey is a really big one that people are using to generate AI art, and it's like and these, I mean, this stuff is beautiful,
Yeah.
but every now and then I will see someone ask the question, "Oh, are you going to sell your art?" And I'm like, "Ooh, yikes! Ooh, I don't."
We use
You know what I mean?
I in one of the discords I'm in, we have a Mid Journey because you can put Mid Journey in on Discord, and
Mhm.
it's fun, and
That's
it's
where you do it.
fun. It's just a
Yeah.
fun time. But doing it with the intent of commercial use
Mhm.
seems weird to me.
Yeah. I don't I'm not going to say that that's everyone's intent, but I am saying I've seen a handful of people ask the question like, "This is beautiful. Are you going to sell this? I'd like to buy it."
There are people that I think I've seen, like, how to make money from home. You can make
Yeah.
money in 20 minutes. Like, put your AI art on Fiverr basically and be like, and you
Right.
can make like 30, 40 AI generated things in, however much time, sell them for X amount of dollars. Bing, bada bing, bada boom.
Right.
Look at you making another stream of income. So I think
Right.
that there are people that do it, just like there are all
Mhm.
those people that make like coloring books and sell them on KDP and like all that stuff.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
uh, I don't know.
I know. It's a lot. It's a lot, and the ball is rolling somewhat quickly. So, it's going to be interesting to see how these things go and what shape it takes
Hmm.
when it's all said and done, and if there's any true backlash,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
It'll be interesting. We'll
Mm,
be all watching it, and
yeah.
because it just keeps coming up. I mean, I think
Yes.
I can't even, what is it? Chat GPT just started. I saw something that they have an app now, so it's not just
They
computer
have.
based.
Yep.
So like,
That's right.
it's gonna spread to more people because how many people just don't have a computer but they only have a phone? So then more
Yep.
people can do it. And
My
AI
grandson
will
just
get
put
better.
this app on his phone. He said it's called Ask AI. So he asked AI to do something, and it did it. And we were just kind of talking about, like, what do you think about what was written? Would you have written it this way? We just had like a little conversation. He's 11, and so it's a big thing.
I mean, I do think that there are uses for these kinds of things, for like data, retrieval. I've seen people talk about using it for job searches and like generating different things to like talk about in your resume and like to find. So there are ways to use these tools, if you're really going to interact with them and not just be very surface level with them. Um,
Yeah,
and they only get better as we put input into AI. They will only get better if we add to it. If we don't add to it, it's
exactly.
not going to work, which is why they're open source and why they have all these people using it, because you can only make it better by putting information in. But I do
Right.
think that
It's like,
if I
yeah,
was in school and I didn't have time and I had to write an essay on something,
yeah.
I would totally have had Chat GPT like at least start an essay for me. I wouldn't
But
hand that
that's
essay
cheating.
in, but like I would edit it. I know it's cheating, but I'm saying that I 100% would have cheated if I was pressed for time. I'm not I am an amoral messy human just like everybody else, okay? I will fully admit that I would use it as a resource
Oh
to
my
create a
gosh.
framework to write a book report
Oh
or
my
an
gosh.
essay on, whatever.
That
I
is
would
too
totally do it.
funny.
Totally. You cannot tell me that if your back was against the wall that you'd be like, "No, I'm going to write every single one of these words from scratch."
I don't
I
think
wouldn't
you
hand it in. If you
understand
hand it,
how much of a scary nerd that I was in school.
uh,
I would never. I am not really a rule breaker like that.
uh. Anyway, I mean, I don't think that like
Any,
any
yeah,
children listening, don't hand in exactly what an AI just shits out to you. Okay.
I would say children don't use it at all. Your teachers are going to listen,
Use your
kids. If they're
brain, do
kids,
research.
again, Caleb and I were talking about this. Kids, understand this. You are not winning the system. Your teachers know how you write.
Yep.
Remember that.
Which is why
They
you
know
can't
how
just
you
hand
write.
it in. You have to like.
Don't use it at all, kids. Do you hear me? Don't use it at all. Your teacher knows how you write, and so do your parents. So there. You're not going to get away with it. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. Don't do it. Alyssa's like, I'm just
Well, I'm not saying use. I'm saying it like it's gonna give you like at least the format of like where your flow of your ideas should go, and then change the freaking words to match yours. I find it easier to.
You're talking like high school level. I'm saying like elementary kids have phones.
Oh yeah, I forget that.
Kids, don't try this. Don't do it.
You're not
I'm
smart
trying to
enough to
tell
work
you,
the system. Don't do that. You haven't learned.
don't do it. Don't do it. Just stay away from it.
Don't listen to Auntie Alyssa. She's going to steer your eye.
Your teacher knows.
I don't have children. My dogs can't write. It's fine.
But you know that's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
Which is why I'm saying you
Students
can't
are
just
going to
hand
use
that
it.
shit
They're going to
in.
use it.
You can use it as a framework. I don't think that there's anything wrong with using something as a framework. And
Listen,
but
you it's gonna be like back in the day. What was it? The Cliff Notes?
yeah, but you still use
It's
that
just
as
like
framework.
thinking you don't have to read the book and you can like get away with, writing a full on paper, taking an exam off a Cliff Note.
But
It's the same
sometimes Cliff
thing.
Notes were helpful if you did read the book and you were trying to articulate something, because
See,
it would
I said
articulate something for you so that you can
you
figure out how
said
to articulate.
if you read the book. I'm saying, listen, don't
I'm
act
not
like you don't
saying
know
you
those
can't do the
students.
work, children. I'm just saying
No, I'm talking about
you
those
can
students.
leverage
There's
your
always a
technology.
handful. They're not going to read the book. They're going to go straight to Cliff Notes. And they're going to think they can write that full on paper and take that big exam off of Cliff Notes without even having ever read the book. And those students are the same ones that are trying to write a whole paper with AI and not just use it as a framework. You know
Well,
it.
those
You know
people
it.
will probably end up running our country.
Exactly. That's what's going to happen. Meet your next president.
You don't know how to read, but
Right. I know how to cheat. Yep. So it's gonna get that will be another interesting conversation as things progress in the world of AI. Is like how are educators going to deal with it?
well,
Are they going to have some things in place to like,
they have
what's that
stuff.
system?
They
You can
have stuff that
scan papers to see if you stole,
I can't remember what
plagiarized
it's
stuff.
called, but yeah, no, they everywhere I've ever as an adult had to like submit a paper for school has gone through that,
Yeah,
because so many people cheat and so many papers are
yeah.
online and so many all that this is doing, this is not the point of this conversation, but all that this
It
is
is the point of this
all that
conversation. It
chat
all is
gtp does
related.
is it takes out the like the middleman, basically. Like all of that stuff
Right.
is actually available on like write my like there's all these like paper um websites where you can get stuff, and it just takes sort of the middleman out and compiles things and sticks it out and
Right.
throws it out for you, so
Yeah.
you can still do it. Like
No, I'm
you just
talking
have to put more
about
effort in.
from the educator's perspective of like, um, are they going to put in layers of checking these papers and make sure that it wasn't ripped off from something else? That's what I'm
They do
talking
that,
about.
so that's what you would have to be submitting them through another application, and it checks it to make sure you're not.
Not college level though. I know we did that in college.
I'm sure they're just gonna have to do it lower level then.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, is that going to be a thing they start doing
It should,
because of the progression with AI?
because Auntie Alyssa's telling you to cheat, so
See, like college, that's a thing we do that. Yes, but I'm talking about K through 12. Is that going to be like a
well,
new layer
I
of
didn't have the internet.
checks and balances?
I didn't have the internet for most of my school.
Yeah.
And when we did have the internet in school, it was really shitty. You understand.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So this is a topic to watch.
It
It's a
is.
topic to
It is.
watch.
It's very interesting. We'd love to know all of your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, well, let's move on so that Auntie Alyssa doesn't upset anybody else.
Let us know if you are team human being audiobook or if you are team AI narrated audiobook.
Yeah. And we'll link both the article and Travis Baldry's thing. So if you want to go listen to it in its entirety, you can. You can go back and forth and hear the differences and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what book recommendation do you have for the people?
I am going to recommend The Nursery by Sylvia Molnar.
Oh, I really wanted
Really,
that. I didn't.
it's a nice slim book. Thank you, Pantheon, for sending this to me. This is out now. It's a wonderful book. So it says this is the before and the after. Withering in the material prison of her apartment, a new mother finds herself spiraling into a state of complete disaffection. As a translator, she is usually happy to spend her days as the invisible interpreter. But now, home alone with her newborn, she is ill at ease with this state of perpetual giving, caring, feeding. The instinct to keep her baby safe conflicts with the intrusive thoughts of causing the baby harm as she struggles to reclaim her identity, just as it seems to dissolve from underneath her. This is really such an up close and personal look at a woman that is dealing with postpartum depression, and this is actually a very dark book in a lot of ways. Just all of her thoughts about, of course, she loves her child, but also it's like, you just think of what would happen if I just disappeared you. You know what I mean? Like, or if you accidentally choked to death, would it be so bad? You know what I mean? It's and all the thoughts around the fact that her body has just become this like feeding vessel for this child, and even my nipples know it. Like when the child cries, my breast and my nipples respond to that cry. It's like I'm just here for this child now, and I've lost the things that were just for me, including my independence and my time and my ability to just be alone in my own thoughts. And it was really stirring and quite beautiful too, with how she formed this friendship with a man in her older man in her building who had lost his wife, and he was grieving, and in a lot of ways she was grieving too, grieving the life before motherhood. And this neighbor, this old man, initially came to her door because the baby was crying, and he was like, "Can you please make this baby stop crying?" And she's like, "Dude, what do you want me to do? It's a baby." Right? And so from that day on, he just came to her house every day. They would sit down and have tea, and she would kind of unload like all of her thoughts and frustrations about motherhood to him, and he would talk about his wife, and it was a really beautiful friendship they were forming, albeit a little bit weird, but it was still beautiful. But I mean, she was really struggling, but I thought that as short as this book was, it really packed in a lot, but in such a relatable way. And I really enjoyed this. I don't know how many books this author has written, but I'm into her. I really enjoyed this. And that's The Nursery by Sylvia Molnar.
I do like books that talk about like the real thoughts that women have after they give birth and about
Mm-hmm.
motherhood. I think that we're expected to be very, I don't know, sunshine and rainbows about it all, but
I like
no,
it when it's
like
messy and complicated. Even before she had the baby, her thoughts were getting darker. Just before the baby even arrived.
yeah.
She says, "In the meantime, our simple weekly routines continue, all while you are still a thought, and I think about how I'm going to resent you once you arrive. You will disrupt the peace. You will get in the way of my freedom. It's possible you may one day ask for an apology. I'm just being honest. I want you as much as I fear you." It's fantastic.
Sounds really good.
Yeah.
I have a much more uplifting book for you. I don't own it. It's called The Minuscule Mansion of Myra Malone by Adjei-Brenyah. It came out in January. It's a debut novel, and I just thought that this was really kind of heartwarming. And
Oh.
and it kind of takes a bunch of twists and turns. But basically, there is this woman, Myra Malone, and she has this like dollhouse that has like a huge following on like as a blog and stuff, and like she makes little rooms for, and people like to follow the little rooms and everything with the little rooms. And so she's got this big following, but Myra herself is like a big recluse. She got into a car accident when she was really young, so she's kind of like scarred and disfigured. She lives in
Oh.
the attic of her house predominantly. She doesn't really
Yeah.
go anywhere, and she has this one friend who kind of is the connection to the outside world. And she has this really big internet following. So she finds out that basically the house that she lives in is going to be auctioned off underneath her because her mom has been dealing with her own stuff and hasn't been paying the bills. And so
Oh
this
no.
leads Myra to trying to find a way to raise money to buy the house back and to pay off the debts to the bank. And that involves doing like a competition and having more direct interaction with her audience, which is incredibly scary for her because she's basically an agoraphobic and has like terrible social anxiety. And this starts to, she ends up developing this relationship with this person who stumbles upon her uh, her blog because he's living in the minuscule house. So this is like a magical realism thing. So there is an actual minuscule house, and he lives
Yeah.
in that house. And the things that happen in the house happen in the little house, and vice versa. So like
Oh, this is so
so
interesting.
sometimes things, get added or removed. His dad refuses to live in the house. So you get this dual storyline of like, why does the real house exist? And what is all of that about? And like the sort of magical realism of that all. And then you have her whole storyline of like saving her life and the two of them meeting each other and developing a relationship and all of that. So it's great. It's so
This
charming
sounds so
and
good.
fun, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really wonderful, and I liked the story. That I liked both timelines because the other story goes back generations of women in this guy's family and kind of how the house came to be and all these other things. So it's really good. I liked it.
I like how that
It was just a good
sounds.
time. So this is the minuscule mansion of Myra Malone by Audrey
Oh.
Burgess, and I thought it was great. It's out. It's a newbie-ish. It's out. Was it out
Oh, I
in
was getting ready
January?
to ask you, is that a new release or is that a
It came out
backlist
in
book?
January.
That sounds like a fun read.
It is. It's just
And it
fun.
does have feels like it has a tinge of coziness to it.
Yeah, and there are dark elements to it. There's, but it's just nice. There's a lot of discussion of all kinds of different things like uh class and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. But
Yeah.
it was good. Yeah.
Well, all right. Good episode.
It was a good episode.
Anyway, folks,
I hope that
thanks for tuning in.
yeah, I hope that everybody has a lot to add to this. I think this is going to be like a discourse that we're having for quite a while.
Yes, it's definitely an ongoing discussion for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, anyway, follow us everywhere. TBR Lowdown. Visit our website, tbrlowdown.com. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here. Bye.
Bye.